One incident that I remember happening at Rod's when they first opened the store. They put a full size plastic horse up on a high pole in front of the store. The store sits right on I-71, up above the level of the highway, and it put it up in the air, and everybody goes by there sees it. And so things went along. Come wintertime, they decided to put a blanket on it, and they got a ladder and put a blanket on it. Well, it wasn't long before the city come by and told them they're going to have to take the blanket off because there was lights, electric lights, underneath the horse sticking out, out on a stem and lighting the horse up. And so it was considered electric sign, and they couldn't have a flammable product on it. And so somebody got a hold of the newspaper, told them that what was going on, and that they was going to have to take the blanket off of that horse for the winter. He couldn't have a blanket on. Going to be out there in the cold without a blanket. And so the people at the newspaper, they rode this thing, they milked it, and there was something in the paper nearly, every week for a month and a half. And so we got a lot of advertisement out of it. And finally, at the last minute, they got up there and pulled it off. But they left it up there until they just could not go any longer. And so then they painted a blanket on it. And of course the city couldn't say anything about that. But they got a lot of publicity out of that horse. And this is over 25 years later. That horse is still standing up there and still got the painted blanket on it that he started with. Oh goodness. It's funny how things happen sometimes, and if you're quick, you can take advantage of it. Rod's wife was named Charlene, and she went by Charlie. And her dad was a character. His name was Art. Right this minute I don't recollect his last name, but Art loved Western stuff, loved going out west, and his dream was to go out west and shoot a buffalo. So we started calling him the Buffalo Hunter. And he played a banjo. He was good. And every time we had any kind of an event at the store, he'd come and he would stroll through the store playing his banjo and talking to people, and just a kind of an ambassador. And everybody enjoyed it. He enjoyed it, and it was good for the store. After I left Rod's, sometimes after I left, he got a chance to go out west and shoot a buffalo. And I went in the store one time, and there was a big old buffalo head mounted, hanging on the wall. And I thought to myself, well, Art finally got him a buffalo. And so I asked somebody, and they said, yeah, that's Art's. He got him. And so he finally realized his dream. He went and shot him a buffalo. I never did get to ask him much about it. I didn't see him but once or twice after that, and there were times that either he was busy or I was busy, so didn't get a chance to talk very much. Um, when during the first year that I was at Rod's that time, uh, Dan and Rod and I made quite a few trips um, out to and visited horse trainers, horse people, just trying to get something going on our custom-made saddles. There was nobody in the state of Ohio at that time building custom saddles. Um, in fact, there was nobody in any state around Ohio. Tennessee, they were a lot of saddle makers down there, but they all worked in factories. So I was an oddity, and as I've already mentioned, I was on TV a couple of times. Um, I remember uh, my mom and dad and my sister and her family come up from Texas one time, and they happened to be here the day that I was on TV, and it was on a I'm not sure what kind of, it was just a talk show, and they asked me about saddles and what went into making them and this, that, and the other, but that really wasn't the highlight of the program as far as I was concerned. Besides talking to me, well, they were also uh, talking on the telephone with this guy in California that made worm chili, made chili, and worms was the meat in it. And so they were talking to him, and they were cooking a pot of chili, and he was telling them how to do it and everything. And so before the program was over, well, the chili was finished, and they said, "Okay, who's going to sample this?" Well, nobody except this lady that was, I don't know, she's, I, I hate to judge her, but she looked a little off, and she finally got up and says, "I'll taste it." And she went over and got her a spoonful, and I don't know where it had any worms in it or not, but she got a spoonful and put it in her mouth, and oh, it was good, and going on about how good it was. But she didn't go back for seconds, and nobody else wanted to try it, but that was the first time I saw chili, worm chili. uh, I started to ask them, but I never did ask anybody. But I asked them. I wanted to ask them if they dressed them worms before they put them in the chili, or they just put them in a hole and everything, or and everything that was in them. But that was something else. I don't. That didn't have anything to do with leather, but oh boy. Um, Bob, a saddle maker down in Cincinnati, Bob Hill, and Huck Gilchrist went to a saddle making school run by Tom Taylor over in Pennsylvania. And Tom was a pretty good saddle maker and evidently a good teacher. But anyway, and Huck was making a few saddles. Bob was making a few saddles, but Huck got into shaps, halters, and tack more than he did saddles, I think. Bob made a few saddles, but his big thing in his shop was tack repair. And at one time he had a trailer, just a regular house trailer, small house trailer, and it gutted, and it was set up on the racetrack down in Cincinnati. And he had a shop in it, and he did repair work right there at the track. And they stayed pretty busy doing that, and he would build a saddle occasionally on the side. Uh, Later on, Bob got into making jockey boots, the lightweight boots that the jockeys wore. And from what I understand right now, he's one of 5 in the world that makes these to custom made to fit the riders. And he just got all the work he can do. Um, I kid him about getting out and doing something occasionally, and oh, I ain't got time. I got to work. And but I'll see him at an auction somewhere, up at the Weaver auction. I'll see him up there occasionally. But he works. He's got a lot to do. Huck Gilchrist, he ended up moving to Oklahoma, and oh, I kind of lost contact with him. He was closer to me than he had been, because at that time I was living in Texas, and he moved to Oklahoma, and we just kind of lost track of each other. I was going to some gun shows occasionally and trading guns, and I got a hold of his phone number, and I knew he wasn't very far from Oklahoma City, and there was going to be a gun show up there on a weekend. And so I called him and talked to him a little bit and told him, I said, if you hadn't got anything better to do, well, come on over to the gun show this weekend, and we can visit. And well, I was up there Friday, early Saturday morning, all day Saturday, and I got up Sunday morning. That was the day that he was going to be there, Sunday. I got up sick. Man, I was sick. And all I wanted to do was go home. So I went to the fairgrounds where they were holding the show, and about the middle of the morning I packed. I waited till about the middle of the morning. I didn't know exactly what time he'd be there, but I waited as long as I could stand it, and finally I just packed up and went home. And from what I understand, a couple of hours after I'd left is when he got there. And he was a little upset, and I don't blame him. But I was just sick. I felt like I needed to get home. And I didn't know how much worse I was going to get, and I had 150 miles to drive. And so I went on home. I hated to, but I did. I hadn't talked to him once or twice after that, and from what I understand now, from what I've heard, Huck is dead. He had three boys, and I don't think either one of them is working in leather now. They got good jobs. I decided to go down and visit Bob Hill one day, I think it was on, well, it was on a Friday, I believe. I decided to go down there. I called him and told him I was coming. And so I was on the freeway going through Cincinnati. The racetrack was across the line in Kentucky. And I got behind this pickup. There's West Virginia plates on it. And the more I looked at this guy, the more familiar he looked. All I could see was the back of his head, and he had a cowboy hat on. So I saw he had a CB antenna on. And so, and I had a CB in my truck. And so I took a chance and called him. Well, it was Huck. And so I asked him, I said, hey, you know, where are you going? He said, I'm going down to Bob's. And I said, well, I am too. I said, you know how to get there? Oh, yeah. I said, okay, I'll follow you. So I had a guide getting there. I'd never been there before. So we got down there, and there was another guy there that went to school with them. Went to the Tom Taylor's saddle making school. And we were talking, and they all kind of about halfway started a sentence at the same time, wanting to ask me a question. And back then, when I finished off